the deposit. He stopped when he saw two men in front of him. They were the loan sharks Shalo and Meatloaf. They passed by, and the young man was surprised that these two even greeted the Baron's son. The hero frowned, and an idea struck him. The guests entered Arcus's office. One of them sat down leisurely on the edge of the table and asked how long the man would delay payment. The fat man added that more than 5 days had already passed, and if he continued to delay payments like this, they would not sit idly by. The Baron frowned and looked down. Shalo looked at him with disdain and said that if he sold the items in the house, the money would appear. The protagonist cautiously peered through the door. He smirked and mentally noted that it was timely. The guy grinned and thought that they appeared when needed. RP amount 36. The young man looked at the system window and noted that he received some points by improving his relationship with Xavier. It remained to figure out where to use them. Notification: by investing the received points in talent, you can improve your abilities. The guy looked at the screen in surprise and noted that the messenger still knows how to explain normally. Next message: damn, I will not explain. The hero hastened to apologize. Suddenly, a circle lit up under Lloyd's feet. It began to rise higher up the young man's body. Knowledge: soil mechanics, hydrology, structural mechanics, water supply system, design of steel and concrete structures, the highest level of design. The system wrote that the hero, surprisingly, knows a lot. The brown-haired man frowned and shouted that he definitely needed to get a word in. Notification: possible improvement of knowledge-based skills. Topographic survey, base, required number of points 15. Design, base, required number of points 15. The guy crossed his arms and thought that it was not entirely clear what and how, but there was enough RP and he could try. He clicked on both options. Skill name: topographic survey, base. His eyes suddenly began to glow, and the hero leaned out the window with a scream. The young man saw a virtual grid for design in front of him. Lloyd was surprised that even without using GPS he could calculate everything, just seeing everything with his own eyes. Skill name: design, base. The brown-haired man began to draw a diagram of the house right in the air in front of him. Just recently he had suffered, drawing a project on a piece of paper. The hero sat down on the bed and thought that in the future, of course, it would be much easier for him, but would Xavier's help alone be enough? The guy raised an eyebrow and dreamed that it would be nice to summon heavy equipment. The system reported that there was something to summon. The young man looked at the screen in shock. Random phantom selection. Using RP, you can summon a phantom. Different capabilities, different skills. Choose a phantom partner who will try his best for you in everything. The hero noted that this looked like an advertisement for the game. He squinted and saw on the screen that one phantom choice 50 RP. Lloyd frowned and realized that he was not enough, only 1 point remained. The brown-haired man thoughtfully touched his chin and imagined that the phantom could be a mythical animal like a dragon or a unicorn. In this case, their strength would be equal to the strength of heavy equipment. The guy frowned and decided that he needed to collect RP, and to do this he needed to get the interest of the main characters. Meatloaf slammed his hand on the table and, looking at the Baron, said that he could suggest one way if he didn't have a penny. He grinned and said that a man could sell his wife and children and get good money. Arcus looked at his interlocutor in shock and asked again. The hero said that he should maintain the boundaries of decency even if he was a creditor. The guy put his hand on the fat guest's shoulder. The man recoiled and asked who he was. The father looked at the young man in confusion and said his name. Meatloaf narrowed his eyes and muttered that he was that special naughty eldest son who butted into adults' conversations. He wanted to threaten the guy to leave, but he interrupted him. The hero extended his hand and demanded to see the invitation letter first. The moneylenders shuddered in surprise. Lloyd bowed his head and said that the fundamental law of the kingdom, Chapter 3, Article 6, states that all aristocracy are subjects of the king and have the right to protect their interests. He looked menacingly at the guests and declared that entering the residence of the aristocracy without an invitation letter is considered an intrusion, and this is contained in the law. The interlocutors got angry and shouted that this was nonsense. The young man raised an eyebrow and suggested that they all check together for the presence of the law. The guy frowned and called Xavier. The knight entered the room and greeted the gentleman. The hero bared his teeth and ordered that the intruder's hand be cut off. The swordsman silently grabbed the handle of the weapon. The guests backed away in fear and shouted that they had completely lost their minds. The brown-haired man raised his chin and suggested that they check again whose side the court would take. Xavier threateningly bared his blade. The moneylenders began to sweat and looked at him in fear. The men quickly headed for the exit, shouting that they would make him regret it. The door quickly slammed behind them. Lloyd chuckled and called them worthless. The Baron turned to the boys, and they looked at him. The man jumped up and asked what they had just done in a situation where they had to beg on their knees. The boy silently put the bag on the table. The boy smiled and said that he had originally wanted to get the entire deposit and give it back, but this amount was also enough to pay this month's interest. The father looked at him in shock and asked if this was really the money collected from the villagers. The knight closed his eyes and asked the baron not to worry. He looked at the owner and promised that he would make sure that the boy fulfilled the terms of the contract. Arcus looked closely at the swordsman and thought that his expression showed that he completely trusted him. Lloyd bowed and said that in that case they would go. The boys walked down the corridor. Xavier glanced sideways at the master and said that he did not expect the fool to know such laws. The interlocutor frowned and exclaimed that he had simply heard it somewhere. In general, it was true. Xavier himself told about it in the novel. After the baron and his wife committed suicide, 2 moneylenders wanted to dig up the bodies and sell them. Then the knight voiced this law. Saying these words, he cut their necks. In court, the guy was completely acquitted. The hero closed his eyes with satisfaction and thought that it was a big plus to know the contents of the novel. The young man smiled and noted that a notification should have arrived by now. Notification: Baron Frontera's interest has increased by 6 points. By improving relations with the main character, you receive 60 RP, quantity 61. Lloyd smiled that everything happened as he planned to get the Phantom as soon as possible. The moon was shining in the night sky. The hero was standing on the training ground. He looked around to make sure there was no one around. The guy looked at the system window and applied a random drawing of fantastic creatures. The young man pressed the button and looked at the glow in front of him. Gears were spinning in the air. Lloyd looked up in shock at the sight of such magic. A magic circle was hanging in front of him. The brown-haired man turned pale and thought that this spell was very weak and small. It just made an annoying noise. Something lit up from the magic circle, after which a mouse's head appeared. The aristocrat stared at it in shock. The animal jumped to the ground and looked at the guy. He silently looked at the mouse and grimaced in disappointment. The creature looked at its new owner in fear, after which it began to squeak loudly. The hero turned to him and asked if he could do a lot of things. Shooting acorns was not what he needed. The mouse waved its paws, refuting what the master had said. The guy asked to show him what it could do. The little animal began to chew something vigorously, after which it spat out 2 pieces of paper. The hero unfolded them with disgust and read the contents. It turned out that the creature Peepodong was a cute hamster, which the system asked to take care of with love. He shook out sunflower seeds into his palm. It was said that they could change the structure of the animal. Red sunflower seed: Peepodong will become huge, the effect will disappear in 12 hours. Blue sunflower seed: Peepodong will become small, feed this seed to the hamster before the effect of the red seed ends. The young man looked at the paper and read that a set of 2 seeds costs 1 RP. He looked at the hamster and asked if it grows to the size of a human. Peepodong squeaked in response, and the hero realized that he needed to check for himself. The boy gave the hamster a seed and thought that the animal should be good at digging and could be useful if it became the size of a human. Peepodong began to chew the seed. The aristocrat looked in surprise as it began to glow and increase in size. Something pushed the hero, and he flew back. Lloyd stared at him in shock and turned pale. A 5-meter hamster stood in front of him. No, it was at least 10 meters. Peepodong looked at his owner with disdain. Peepodong's skill: digging level 1. The animal began to dig actively, leaving a ditch behind it. Peepodong's